Sick of the week. It's Halloween. Are your kids' treats filled with tricks? Do you know what's really inside that candy? The answer is mostly sugar and not drugs and poison. Sorry to break it to everybody. The rumor of poison candy or razor blades in apples has been around for decades, but there's really no evidence that kids actually are being injured by their Halloween candy. There was a case of an actual child dying from eating cyanide-laced pixie sticks in 1974, which is extremely tragic. However, his dad was the one who gave him that candy, and it turns out that the dad had taken out life insurance policies on his kids shortly before. So I think that was more of a case of him hearing and believing the rumor and thinking that that would be a good cover story for what he actually did to his own kid. It's an absolutely horrifying crime, but it's not a stranger danger situation so much as trying to, take advantage of this urban legend to cover their crime. So there was another case of a child who collapsed while trick-or-treating, and many people thought that it must have been linked to the candy. Turns out she actually had an undiagnosed heart defect that decided to rear its head in that moment. When you search for cases of children being harmed by Halloween candy, those are pretty much the only two cases that tend to come up. So Halloween anxieties can also be a sign of the time. We have seen transitions from fear of poisoning to now fear of drugs in candy. And it makes sense. In the 1980s, there were cases of cyanide-laced Tylenol in the Chicago area that killed 7 people. And now, with the current opioid crisis or cannabis legalization, feels like you hear more and more about things like candy disguised as drugs that are being given to children. But those are also not things that are really happening on Halloween. Sure, there have been cases of very young kids consuming drugs or even overdosing, but those are typically cases of parental neglect and not specifically from Halloween candy that they've gotten from strangers. The increase in legally attainable recreational cannabis also means that there's a lot of different products that contain THC that look like popular candies and drinks. And there's been at least one case of those items getting into Halloween bags. But since they are labeled cannabis infused, it's more likely that it was an accident rather than like an intentional attempt at tricking children into taking drugs. Recently, there was a big hullabaloo about rainbow fentanyl being used to target children because it looks like candy. But even though the DEA never mentioned Halloween, plenty of news sites took it upon themselves to assume that that would definitely be given out on Halloween in order to hook children. But I would like everyone to consider the fact that drugs are expensive and people are not giving them to your small children for free. Furthermore, it does not make sense for drug cartels to try to get young kids hooked on fentanyl because kids famously are broke and freeloaders. So not exactly a demographic you want to target for a thing that costs money. So there is a real risk to kids on Halloween, though, and that is cars. Pedestrians aged 4 to 8 years old are 10 times more likely to be killed by a vehicle on Halloween than on any other night of the year. So you can check your kids' candy for sure, but mostly so that you can pick out the good stuff first and tell them that you have to test it for safety. I endorse that practice. So this week, I'm giving the Sick of the Week to candy because I love candy and I cannot have its delicious name besmirched by such rumors.